أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد نصركم الله ببدر وأنتم أذلة فاتقوا الله لعلكم تشكرون. 17th of Ramadan coincide with the anniversary of the Battle of Bedr. And Battle of Bedr was the first battle that the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Muslims have gone through. It took place in the second year of Hijrah. At that time when the Prophet has migrated to Medina, and those who have migrated with him that are called Muhajirin, they were only a few hundred people. Those have left behind themselves all their belongings, their properties, their wealth and everything. They have been, taken out of their city, their town by force. So they had to abandon everything and leave Mecca toward Medina. So basically when they got in Medina, they didn't have anything. They were completely poor and out of any materials, let alone weapons and swords and, defensive tools. In addition to that, the community of Medina were a peasant community, a community that lived on farms. There are palm dates even now when you go to Hajj, inshallah, and you see Medina from the air, big part of Medina, it's made from palm trees. So the majority of people in Medina, or let's say overwhelming majority of those people, were peasants, farmers, who lived on agriculture. Their skill was to plant and grow dates and sell dates and live through this income. On contrast with the population of Mecca. Mecca was a city in the desert. The residents of Mecca were all warriors, fierce fighters. Their income is generated by their swords. When someone has a strong sword, goes, raids, attacks other tribes, other towns, confiscate whatever he can, plunders everything and bring it home. This has considered to be, the sign of masculinity. This is how a brave man would show his, braveness. This is how we would call a hero. This is how hero work, is by attacking other people and, confiscating them. So when those Muhajirin, those immigrants, left Mecca toward Medina, they were in a very weak position. In addition, the people of Medina were weak to start with. So they were always under constant harassment and threat of people of Mecca, the pagans of Mecca. Always would send them, warnings, threats, harass them, attack them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has found an opportunity to counterattack, to show the mushrikeen of Mecca that Muslims in Medina are a strong force, they have a sizable force and they can defend themselves. Now what has happened? Meccans lived on two caravans, trade caravans, as all of you know. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشِ إِلَافِهِمْ رَحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. They had two kinds of caravans that would send their camels full of goods to sell it in different parts and get the income back home. And every year, one of the leaders of Mecca would be in charge and take the entire caravan and sell it. So one caravan would go to Sham, to Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and these areas, and the other one would go south toward Yemen and sell their product. This is how that was an extra income beside their warrior style. So the caravans were about 1,000 camels. In that year, in the second of Al-Hijrah, Abu Sufyan was heading the caravan with 50,000, dinar, which is golden coin, worth of this caravan. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, wanted to give mushrikeen of Mecca a lesson. that you're not the only one who attack us, harass us, give us hard time. We also can counteract and show you that we have also sizable force. Therefore, it was a show of force. And here is, brothers and sisters, there is a fact that we have to clarify to non-Muslims. Many would say that Islam has advanced by the might of swords and coercion. But when you look at the ayat, you see that it is only has to be a very valid reason, very necessary reason, in order for any war to break. Jihad means when you defend yourself. When you see an imminent threat, someone is about to attack you or has already attacked you, at that time, it is your duty to defend. It has to have a very valid and reasonable cause in order to go into fighting. There are many verses. Here, I have chosen one. It says, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا. God has given permission for those Muslims to enter a war. For what reason? Because they have been oppressed. The oppression is the key term here. The non-Muslims have oppressed the Muslims, therefore, as a means of defense, they have fought against those. الَّذِينَ أُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ. They have been kicked out from their own properties and house for no reason. What has left for you is to defend yourself. Or in another one, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. Fight those who fight you, who are determined to fight you. At that time you have to go and fight. فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. In the same way that he attacks you, he insults you, you also insult him in the same manner. Here are the justification for war and for aggression. Other than that, you don't have any Islamic leader or, according to Islamic teachings, that you attack other neighboring other countries that are at peace with you or have not harassed you. In fact, God admonished Muslims. Say those people who, do not share your faith and your religion, if they're nice to you, if they have done good to you, you return the good to them. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين. God would not prevent you from those who have not fought you over the religion. وَلَمْ يُخْرِجُوكُم مِّن دِيَارِكُمْ. They were not oppressed, they didn't oppress you. أَن تَبَرُّوهُمْ وَتُقْسِطُوا إِلَيْهِمْ. Be nice to them, be just with them, deal with them in a pleasant way. Even if he's non-Muslim, even if he's mushrik. So the fact that he doesn't believe in God doesn't entitle you to attack him and kill him. The fact that attacking you and harassing you and causing trouble, at that time you have to defend yourself. And here was the difference between Islam and the previous religions. You see, brothers and sisters, when you look at the previous prophets before Islam, take from Nuh alayhi salam, and as you go down to Ibrahim, to Moses, to Nuh, to Hud, to Lut, to Saleh, you see that it was always the prophets who get oppressed, the believers get oppressed by their own people, until the prophet raises his hand for dua, say amman yujib, then the wrath of God comes and destroy the bad people. That has happened to people of Nuh, people of Hud, Lut, Saleh, and you name it. Is that right? But Islam was an exception. The Prophet, at the same time that he would worship Allah, goes to the corner of masjid and would say amman yujib and pray, but he relied on his sword, on his ability. He didn't stay in his hometown or in Medina and said, okay, let's worship Allah. Allah will get us rid of, get us rid of the enemy, and they will be repelled. No, rather he sat down, he planned, he masterminded the attacks to attack the mushrikeen in a place that hurts them the most. God has given you a brain. So I have given you a brain, I have given you muscles, use it. Utilize it, sit down and think. In the same way that the enemy is doing all their plans to attack you, to dominate you, you also counterweight them. Sit down and think about it. Therefore you see that the adab, the punishment from a divine punishment that always God would punish the previous people never happened after Islam. Rather, it was the sword of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who has defended Islam and defended the believers. And that was the key difference between Islam and the previous nations before Islam. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Well, it is understood after a big chilo kebab, your salawat is, so weak. I want you to say something that is to show the cook that, you deserve another chilo kebab next week, next day. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. I thought that nowadays, no one falls asleep, but it seems the food was really good that I can hear some snoring as well. Anyway, so when the Prophet moved toward the caravan of Mushrikeen, Abu Sufyan, who had been very cunning, he realized the threat. And he knew that, the Prophet is no kidding with him. So he ordered, as the caravan is passing by, at the outer skirt of Medina, close by, to go to Sham on their way. So they had no other road but just to pass through Medina. At that time, there was another route, of course, which was by the sea, close to the Red Sea, and go toward north. And that's what Abu Sufyan did. So once he realized the threat is imminent, he changed the course from going in the normal way, went toward the sea. At the same time, he asked someone who was, a real show, a very nice actor, told him, you go to Mecca, you enter Mecca, and you plead with people to come to rescue us. Otherwise, if they don't rescue us, 50,000 dinar are gone. Now you tell a mushrik, you tell him that your money is gone. You tell him if your God is gone, it's better than his money. I mean, what does he have in this world? His God is made out of, wood and stone, and sometimes out of date, And here it is. I've tell you this story. The second Khalifa, he himself, the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, when I was young, I used to make idol from the date. I used to work. When they give me money, I will grab the money and buy date with it. Then I would sit down and make, my idol. The same idol I would worship. Afternoon, I feel hungry. I look this way, that way. I cannot find, something to fill my stomach. So I jump on my God and eat my God all in one session. So to a mushrik, a pagan, you tell him money, that's more than everything else. So this guy, he walked, he rode his horse and went so quickly toward Mecca. As he entered Mecca, he inverted the ride, meaning he sat backward on the camel. He cut off the ears of the camel, let the blood, spills, and torn his clothes completely, and went inside Mecca yelling and screaming, "Oh, people, come to rescue us. Muhammad has destroyed us." He agitated the entire population there. Of course, at that time, Abu Jahl, who was spearheading the animosity and hostility toward the Prophet and Muslims, he said, "Yallah, let's get into business and, gather everyone to go to rescue the tribe and to teach Muslims a great lesson." Utbah, who was also a mushrik, but was a wiser man, he said, "Look, no need to fight. Who are those people that we are fighting? Those were all migrants of Mecca. If we kill them, we have killed our brothers and our sons and relatives." In fact, his son Hudayfa had become Muslim and has joined, the Prophet. So he said, there is no need to fight. If we kill, we're going to be killing our relatives. And if they kill us, it's even worse. So why do we tend to get into fight that we can avoid it by peaceful means? But Abu Jahl insisted, said, "No, you're a coward person. You don't like to fight because you are afraid of Muhammad." This is how, he even made him even worse, agitated. The mushrikeen all gathered with their warriors. They were 950. Look at the difference now. 950 from Mushrikeen, they had 700 camels, all had swords, meaning 950 swords. 700 camels and 200 horses, 600 shields, you know, the shield that they wear while they go into the fighting. On the other side, the Muslims, their swords were only 4 swords. The Mushrikeen had 700 camels, Muslims had only 70 camels. 70 camels. And only 5 of those shields to protect themselves. The rides were only 7, and 2 horses. 2 horses, 4 swords, and 70 camels. Now they had to share, they were 313. So if you want to compare between the munitions, between the arms, there was no comparison. I mean, in terms of strategic planning, no one who's sane would enter in such kind of battle. It is unqualified. There is a huge difference between the two. So someone would risk to be completely annihilated if he goes into such kind of battle. But the Prophet has decided to do this. Now when they were walking toward Bedford, which was outside of Medina, it's about 100 kilometers away from Medina, the Muslims had to share their rights because they only had 70 camels and they were 313. So basically every 3 people had to share the right. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa would share the right with Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam and another man called Murdif. He would take the ride for a while, then he will come down, the next one will go, and 2 will walk. Then, keep doing like this for a while. They insisted upon the Prophet, no, Ya Rasulullah, we can do this, we can manage it. You ride the camel? The Prophet says, no. ما أنتما أقوى مني ولا أنا أزهد منكما في الأجر. Neither you are stronger than me, nor I am so, careless about the thawab. I also would like to earn thawab. Just like you want to earn the rewards and thawab, I also would like to earn the thawab. You see, brothers and sisters, this was one of the main points of the success and victory of Muslims. When they see their leader is with them and sharing their agony, sharing their hardship and difficulty. When you look at Muslim leaders later on, especially at this time, who pays the price? Only the weak, only the poor people, only those who have not. But the leader, where is he sitting? He's sitting in his mansion, sitting in his palace, eating the best food. He dresses the best clothes, and he and his family, you don't hear any of them get in trouble and get shot or wounded. Shh, Ali, take Ali out. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. So it is unlike those leaders. So they saw in the Prophet, peace be upon him, a genuine, a trustworthy leader who's sharing them, the same fate that they are in. No difference between him and them. This was the strongest point who allowed Muslim to win the battle. Anyway, both of them, as the Muslims got close to the caravan, they saw that the caravan has already escaped. Abu Sufyan took the caravan from the seaside and went toward Aqaba, and from there toward Sham. The Prophet paused, but he knew that the Mushrikeen is coming for him. They're coming to have a showdown with him. The Prophet asked the Muslims. He told them that now we missed the caravan. What would you like to do? Would you like to defend your city and have retribution and teach the Mushrikeen a lesson, or you want to go back home? One of the great Sahaba, and I have to mention his name, it was Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, innaha Quraysh. Do you know Quraysh? People of Mecca. إنها قريش وخيلاؤها وجبروتها والله ما ذلت منذ أن عزت. He said that it is Quraysh. You don't know Quraysh. Quraysh are heavy fighters. They are fierce fighters, warriors. and they always have been successful. In any battle they went on, they never lost. So I don't see that, it's a good point to have a war with them. The Prophet was disappointed a little bit, but he waited. He waited for another man to stand up and say his word. His name was Al-Miqdad. Al-Miqdad said, Ya Rasulullah, we are not like Bani Israel. When Moses told them, go and fight, they said, اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا إنا هنا قاعدون. They told their prophet, go fight, you and your Lord, while we are sitting here and relaxing here. No, we say just the opposite. We say, اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا إنا معكما مقاتلون. At the same time that you fight, we also fight with you. Miqdad also was Muhajir. The Prophet wanted to hear the people of Medina, the inhabitants of Medina, Al-Ansar. What is their own opinion? Why? Because they are the ones who are taking the burdens. Muhajirin are only a bunch of migrants who came to Medina and they saw everything is ready for them. But the one who pays, the one who takes the entire burden, he's the one who has to be responsible. Any war, any future result will reflect on the state of the inhabitants of Medina. He wanted to see their opinion. So the Prophet searched for more. He said, I'm waiting for more. The leader of Ansar, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, spoke up. He said, قال يا رسول الله كأنك أردتنا. You're waiting for us to speak. The Prophet said, yes. قال يا رسول الله لقد آمنا بك وصدقناك وأعطيناك عهودنا. We have given you our pledges. We have a full belief in you, full faith in you. فلو سرت بنا إلى برك الغماد. If you go to Barak al-Ghamad, Barak al-Ghamad was Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia is called at that time Barak al-Ghamad. That they have to jump over the waters, plenty of obstacles there. Was a very difficult place to reach. So Sa'd ibn Mu'adh has told the Prophet, even if you go to that place, we are willing to go with you and fight with you and give our blood and our existence in your own way. At that time, the Prophet was relieved, since it has boosted the morals of the Muslims. Now the Muslims got ready to go and fight. At that time, the prayer of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam worked. At that time, the Prophet, peace be upon him, started to do his prayers. Now when you look at Quran, you see that God has referred to Battle of Badr more than any other battle. Has talked about it in many verses, in many places. And here is the one. At that time, God, of course, in the Quran, when you recite Quran, you see that God is not hesitant to show the weak points of Muslims. To say where the weak points are. He discusses this. He says that وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ وَأَنْتُمْ أَذِلَّةٌ. God has given you victory. That's why you were completely humiliated. You were nothing. But it was God who has supported you and has given you victory. Then he scores those people who didn't go to fight. He says that كما أخرجك ربك من بيتك بالحق وإن فريقا من المؤمنين لكارهون. Many of those believers, of those Muslims were, they were reluctant. They didn't want to go and fight. He also describes the way that they went to the battle. He says that يجادلوك في الحق. They kept arguing with you. بعدما تبين, until it becomes clear that God has mandated for you to go and fight. يساقون إلى الموت وهم ينظرون. In the same way that you take them to execution, like you go and execute them, how the person becomes terrified and have lost his own temper and control. That's what has happened to those sort of Muslimin who have completely lost their senses. كأنما يساقون إلى الموت وهم ينظرون. They were so terrified from having the show off with the mushrikeen. But it was the God's blessing and the prayers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who has paid the big price for this. And God has sent the rescue. It says, إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ. You pleaded with God, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. I am sending 1,000 of angels to support you. God has sent them 1,000 of angels. Now when the Muslimin, 313, came to Battle of Bedford, all of a sudden they saw masses of mushrikeen waiting for them. More than 1,000. Of course, everyone, gets frightened, terrified. But God has given them, sleeping pills. Tiny little sleeping pill to all Muslims, made them all sleep completely. It says, إِذْ يُغَشِّيَكُمُ النُّعَاسَ أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ. God has given you sleep, after so much of walking and, getting tired. God gave you this tiny little sleeping pill, and all of you slept deeply. They had a deep sleeping. Even their snores were coming out, from them. It's a reality. The narrator says people were snoring, those Muslims were snoring due to this heavy sleep that they had. Not only this, it says, أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ وَيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمْ رِجْسَ الشَّيْطَانِ. Those who slept, many of them even became junub while they were sleeping. Look at how they, with such a peace of mind they slept, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has showered them with rain. It formed ponds close to them. So they got up in the morning, they drank from this pond, and they washed themselves. They cleaned themselves from rijs al-shaytan. This is how God has supported them. At that time, the malaika came to give them support. Now the narrators say that the malaika, the angels, they went into business and fought the mushrikeen. Because some of those mushrikeen got into prison, they got in captivity, but they didn't realize who had put them in captivity. But the majority of scholars say no, the angels didn't participate in battle. They only boosted the morale of Muslims. Why? Because they were 70 of mushrikeen were killed. 70. If an angel gets into fighting, would he kill 70? I mean, there are 1,000 angels. Each one of them can destroy the entire city with a, tiny little blow. So not 70. The casualties were much bigger than this. Plus, everyone of mushrikeen who had been killed had a known killer. The name of the killer who killed him, the Muslim, has been known. It would not be, it was not an imaginary person who had killed him. In addition to this, what is the point then if the malaika, the angels, will come and support the Muslimin and fight in their behalf? Then what's the big point to brag about and to be considered as a victory of Muslims? The angels did it, a divine intervention. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to teach Muslims that it is with your own spirit, with your own arms and swords, you can defend yourself and, defeat the mushrikeen. At that time, just to make the story simple for you, the mushrikeen came again, Utbah at that time, the Prophet came and gave a speech to the mushrikeen, told them, go back, we don't want to fight you. But they insisted. Utbah said, he's given you a very good, choice. Why do we have to go into battle? Abu Jahl told him, you're the cowardest, person I have ever seen. At that time, Utbah said, no, if you think that I am a coward, I will show you. And here's the problem, brothers and sisters. In certain conditions, in certain incidents, let your brain, let the mentality, the rationality to take over. Don't allow your heart, your emotion to get into driver's seat, because it's going to cause you bigger trouble. And that was the biggest trouble that mushrikeen went. Why? Because he wanted to show, it was only about show off, that he's strong and he can fight the Muslimin. He went to the Prophet and screamed, Ya Muhammad, get us the people that we know to fight with. The Prophet sent the 3 warriors. He had, Utbah had he himself, his older brother Shayba, and his son Al-Walid. They went to fight. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said Hamza to fight Utbah, and their cousin Ubaydullah to fight Shayba, and Ali ibn Abi Talib to fight Al-Walid. They had a duel. In a few minutes, they got engaged with each other. In just a few minutes, the Muslimin, they saw the head of Al-Walid is rolling in the air with the head of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Imam Ali was 25 years old at the time. He has not seen any battle, not even a single battle. That was the first battle that he has entered. And he killed the warrior like Al-Walid. There is a poet who has said this beautiful poetry, in Arabic of course, but I will translate it. He said, وَغَتَاتَ بَدْرٍ وَهِيَ أُمُّ وَقَائِعٍ كَبُرَتْ وَمَا زَالَتْ لَهُنَّ وَلُودًا قابلتها فلم تدع لعقودها نظما ولا لنظامهن عقيدا فالتاح عتبة ثاويا بيمين من يمناه أردت شيبة ووليدا سجدت رؤوسهم لديك وإنما كان الذي ضربت عليه سجودا. This poet, after the engagement, when Ali ibn Abi Talib killed Al-Walid, Hamza and Utbah, they got into fight until their swords broke. And they were fighting, hand in hand, with hands. Ali ibn Abi Talib was behind Hamza. Hamza was very tall. He told him, just bring your head lower, lower your head. Once Hamza lowered his head, the head of Utbah was again rolling in the air with the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He killed Utbah. Then both went to Shayba. At that time, Ubaydullah has, stabbed Shayba, and Shayba has stabbed Ubaydullah. Both of them have fell on the ground. Ali ibn Abi Talib came to complete the job with Shayba and killed Shayba instantaneously. This poet says that those three who have been killed, they have been fought for one thing, that they do salat. They prostrate for the sake of God. But they didn't do this while they chose their head to prostrate in the front of the legs and foot of Ali ibn Abi Talib. You see how it happened? It was the heads of those mushrikeen who have been prostrating for Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib at an age of 25 years old, until both armies engaged in the battle, he himself killed more than 36 of those pagans of mushrikeen of Quraysh. Half of the mushrikeen were killed at the hand of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And he participated with the Muslimin for the rest of those people who were killed. The total of mushrikeen that were killed, about 70. From Muslims, some narrators were saying 7, and some others say 14. Only 14 who were killed. That was the battle of Badr. Brothers and sisters, after 1400 years, what are the lessons? In just a few words, what are the lessons? Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly shows that quantity doesn't matter. You have large number of people, so what? The important thing is the quality. How do you have trusted people? How you have devoted people? The devotion plays a bigger role than the quantity. If you look at the quantity of Muslimin, they were 1/3 of the mushrikeen. Plus their army tools, their ammunitions, their arms were nothing compared to the mushrikeen. But they had one thing, and that's they had devotion in their faith. Their spirit was high. They believed in their cause. Therefore, they could manage to overcome the mushrikeen. Nowadays, look at Muslims. What is the total population of Muslims? How many are we? Some people say 1.5, some people say 1.23. 1.3 billion people. 1,300 million people. For 45 years, more than 50 years, we get defeated every year by only 5 million people. Who have humiliated entire Muslims, have taken the most sacred place of Muslims, and have desecrated that place. And no one can dare to speak. Why? What is the difference? The difference is that we lost the spirit. If you put all Muslims, there is a term, a saying, although it is, it's graphic, but truly makes sense, It says that one of the leaders of Muslims, he said that if the Muslims, make a line, form a line and border of Israel, and each one of them just urinate, we can put Israel into flood. Just through this. Grab a bucket of water and throw a bucket of water onto the land. The entire land will be flooded. But Muslims don't even dare to do that. Why? Because their spirit has lost. We have lost the battle spiritually before physically. How many Muslim countries we have? More than 56 million countries. What is their annual budget? How much we spend, for our defense? Saudi Arabia, only in one contract, more than $70 billion. $70 billion. What did they buy it? The entire population is 35 million. Less than 30 million. Between 30 and 35. This much of weapons buying for what? That they cannot say anything with it. Cannot even, stand up under. What's the point of buying so much weapon? The problem, brothers and sisters, when you look at the other side, those 5 millions, they have self-respect. They have respected themselves. First of all, look at their government. Government stems from their own. It comes with voting, with election. There is, in that country, everyone is considered to be equal in front of the law. There is no preference between that guy and that guy. The prime minister, if he makes a mistake, if he breaks the law, he will be, will be in court. He will be judged and will get convicted. Just a couple of years ago, their president, last year, their president, I think Assad al-Assad or Qassab, he's Yazdi actually, he's from Iran. He was charged with sexually assaulting his secretary. They took him out of the office and put him in jail. They court-martialed him, or put him in court and trial. Put him on trial. Does that ever happen to our Muslim country? Where in the Islamic country you've seen one leader come and admit, says, "I'm sorry, this time I made a mistake." Where the poor people in our countries, they see themselves out of job, out of respect, humility, always a humiliation. Only the leader who gets fatter and fatter and bigger. Only the pocket gets bigger. His pocket gets bigger. But what's the point? What's the benefit of the people? Iraq went into 3 destructive battles. Each battle that they went, only the president became, bigger and bigger, and more corrupt and more corrupt. But there, in their country, anyone can speak up. They can speak up their mind. They can protest. They go into rallies. No one will. They're all being respected. So here's the difference, brothers and sisters. When we put the Islamic principles on shelf, and when we put the justice and fairness that Islam has come after, we abandon those. Of course, we get humiliated every year. Not only 1400. Look for another 1400 years, 2000 years. If we stay in the same way that we are, nothing will happen. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُبَدِّلُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُبَدِّلُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God will not change a bit, nothing, from people until they themselves change within themselves. So this is the message, brothers and sisters. But when you see that a few determined and devoted people who come to, inshallah. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. When you see few determined people who had taken the lesson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and the lesson of Imam Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada, they could have stood up to this fierce enemy. They taught them a lesson that, they never forget. Why? Because it had to do with the spirit, with your spirituality. The stronger you are in the spirit, you can defend anyone, you can defeat anyone. No weapon can stand in your face. This is the take-home message, brothers and sisters, of the battle of Bedr. Inshallah, all the battles of Muslims in the future, provided that they have a good, honest, and trustworthy leadership, can approve and find the victory over the enemies of Islam, inshallah. I have been asked to do the dua. We will recite the ayah sharifa 5 times. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amman yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ah wa yakshuf as-su'. 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات، إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك قاضي الحاجات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.